This afternoon's hobby enhancement is iced tea. I first unboxed this lot about 1 year ago, mid-December. It's nearly mid-December 2025 now. And I've finally painted them. They're done. The lot. Oh, bloody 5,000 points worth. Out of what was originally about a 3,500 points worth army. And it's been a very efficient process. I've actually managed to hit my objective of completing an entire army in 1 year, or saving up to the next one, so I can keep the business going of collecting more armies. I started this army because I wanted to do these chaps, basically. That was the idea. Get a whole bunch of these fellas. I had this paint scheme in mind, and that's what I did. And to make it work, you kind of need a few of these guys. And to make that work, you kind of need a few of these guys. And some of these chaps. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool to have a whole bunch of scrappy dogs running ahead of everybody else just to create mayhem and soak up arrows and all the rest of it. Basically anything that's not red is arrow fodder. And I had the idea for these characters. Oh, and this chap here is a stand-in character for a standard bearer. Next to the unit 1. So it didn't stay that way, of course. I saw this miniature and I thought, oh god, that's good, I've got to get that fella. The chariots came in the box set, so I thought, well, I may as well use them. And I ended up using one of them as a standard bearer. That works quite well. And then I found this guy in an old box and decided to use him. And then I found these things in the shelves at the local games club, and I may have got a little bit carried away. So if we look at where this army's come from, pretty much everything here was intended to be part of the army, except for anything that's big. If it's got a base size bigger than a horsey, then it wasn't part of the original idea. But the original idea has grown, and so has the army. I've used the same paint scheme all the way through. I've used airbrush for red, and then brush painted everything else over the top. I've covered that in earlier videos. Then I've slopped Nuln oil over everything in order to bring the wash through, and that makes it a much faster process, the whole block and slop. And it works on big models as well as the smaller ones. This is, of course, if you're aiming to complete an army in 1 year and you're not aiming to win any contests for the lovely expert level painting that you see in YouTube videos that are not this one. Last time I did a video, I had another 4 things I had to paint. There was this chap and 3 more of the giants. So let's take a moment to have a squiz at those. I thought I had plenty of giants when I had 2 or 3 of them. But then I saw this chunky looking mofo sitting on a shelf, and I thought, that's just so characterful, I've got to get that fella. Look at the size of his fist to height ratio. So I bought this guy and painted him up the same old way. I airbrushed the skin tones on, and then I airbrushed some red around the place to make him look just that little bit uncomfortable, and then hand painted the rest. Just block paint and slot the stuff over the top. And look, you can see some of the messiness of using a wash. Pools in places I don't always catch all the pooling because I'm doing these things late at night and just trying to get through them. But nonetheless, a very satisfying model to paint. One thing with this bloke is you can see his base that he comes on is wider than the nominated GW base that I'm supposed to use. So I thought, you know what, I'll still put him on the GW size base, but I will leave the extra bits on there because it'll look worse if I trim him back. I'll show you some still photos of this so you can have a bit of a squiz. Just when I thought I was done with the giant silliness, I found this guy. And he's got such an awesome dynamic pose. There we go, there's his best angle. I thought, well, you know, for $27 or whatever he cost me, I've just got to grab this guy and add him to the army. And I did him the same way, of course, with the airbrush for the skin tones. His floppy Ugg boots are entirely brush painted. Just an idea of how tall he is. I'll put him there. There's the other characterful chap we were looking at a moment ago. And here's this guy who I thought was quite tall. You know, definitely giant proportions when I got him. But yeah, he's massive, this fella. He's definitely going to intimidate somebody and probably attract a lot of cannonballs. So I was all done collecting giants, thinking four's plenty, and I found this miniature. And it's just such a cool and characterful figure. It's a female giant. She's got all sorts of interesting stuff going on, from the iconography through to the cloak. The cloak is great. To having a deer on her back that she's hunted, and it's clearly a full-size deer. I thought, I've just got to get that one. I think this one might have cost me a couple more bob, but way less than the GW ones anyway. Now, this giant doesn't look as big compared to, say, this giant. He doesn't even fit in the screen when I zoom in on the lady giant. But she's about the same height as this fella, albeit, yeah, with a slightly less ridiculous shoulder to height ratio. But if you want to see how big she is compared to a normal sized person, insofar as a marauder can be considered normal sized, I think we can agree that is definitely giant. I ended up with 6 giant miniatures in the end. I think I said 4 or 5 before. But you can only take 1 giant per 1,000 points. So I've had to change up the army structure ever so slightly. And this grismy looking fella has been demoted. He's no longer a giant. He's now a chaos spawn, which I think you'll agree is probably fitting. If for no other reason than I didn't paint his hair orange for some reason. Don't know why not. He's an odd one out. He's not a ginger, so we'll be racist against him, and we'll say that he's a festering mess of chaos heads spurting out of places they shouldn't be. And that brings us to this chap, who is such a cool figure I just couldn't help myself. This is what started off all the big things in this army. It was supposed to be such a simple and tidy army. But it's a great model. You might suggest that the sorcerer on top looks even better, and from a certain point of view he does, but I already have a sorcerer miniature. I needed a general that can go around and deliver the biff. And look at that chain work hanging off his back end. It's almost the best part of the miniature, except for that lovely ruffle, that mane of orange hair he's got hanging around his face. It looks fantastic. Which is the best thing about it, except for the fact that they were scared of making it anatomically correct, and instead he's a Fanta-pants. Look at that. Let me see if I can get that in focus. It's ridiculous. He's all hairy under there. He's a grower, not a shower. Not sure what had them thinking that a giant roughage down there was a good idea, but that's what they've got. So I painted this guy the same way I did everything else, and it's an incredibly finicky model to paint. I would suggest sub-assembly if you want to do this thing full justice. I wasn't keen on doing that. I've never done a sub-assembly before painting, although I'm probably going to need to with some future models. But either way, that I think is a suitable centerpiece to the army, given there's only ever likely to be 1 or 2 giants in most games. The only way we're going to get all 5 at the table, plus the Gribbly, is in a 5,000 point battle. But yeah, I'm glad that I deviated from the original army concept in order to have this thing, if only because he looks spiffy, or if only that because I'm yet to figure out how to win this fucking game without taking at least 1 big flying Gribbly. So there we have it. Mission accomplished. We've completed the entire 5,000 points in just under a year from unboxing. And I'm rather enjoying playing these guys. They're a good, reliable army that actually works properly, unlike one or two that I've done for shits and giggles. And you know, the previous army I did before this took me probably 8 or 9 months, but that was a straight down the barrel painting wash over white kind of army, and that one was only 2/3 the number of points. The armies I've painted before that have all taken me multiple years, whether they've been the same size as this or smaller. So I'm very happy to keep the mission going, and I've already bought more stuff. I've got the next army in boxes. There it is. So up there on the shelf. Tuck into that in the new year. Gonna do some training in the meantime. And for now, I'll just say thanks for watching. Do help the algorithm out. YouTube's going to change the algorithm so it favours people who are doing clickbait and selling shit rather than just doing hobby stuff for fun. So do hit like, subscribe, comment, tell your friends, all that guff. But for now, it's time to call it a day.